All right. Happy Friday to those of you that are taking the time to tune in. And if you are watching the replay, please make sure you let us know in the chat. I am really, really excited today about the guest that we are bringing on because she is someone that has actually supported me within my business and somebody I've actually learned a lot from. So, as someone who decided to leverage social media to really build their business and really think about how to get beyond their existing network to find clients, how to create content, recycle content, repurpose content has been a huge part of what I've been able to leverage to do that. So I am so excited today to have Emma, who's going to share a little bit more about the work that she does and how she supports thought leaders. Thank you so much, Emma, for joining us. Would you mind just taking maybe a quick second to introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about the people that you serve?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you so much for having me. So my name is Emma, and I run a content repurposing studio called Content by M. So really what we do is we help coaches, educators repurpose their content so they can increase their visibility and reach more people without all of the overwhelm. So what that really looks like is working with people who are maybe video creators, podcasters, people who are already creating some form of content, and then helping them multiply that and repurpose that so they can hit more channels. So yeah, that's a little bit about who I do and what I do and who I normally work with.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for that. Let's maybe just jump right into it. How did you actually get into repurposing content?
Yeah, so when I first started my business, I think I've been in business now for almost 4 years, which is crazy. I was kind of a general marketing assistant, so doing a lot of VA work, but it always tended to go with, marketing sort of tasks. And I found that the number one thing that all of my clients seemed to have in common, that was like their biggest struggle, was always content. So really staying consistent, making sure that they were nurturing their audience in all those different places. And the thing is, a lot of them were already producing really, really good content. So maybe they had a Facebook group where they were like super active and they were able to really show up there, but then they just had trouble being consistent in all these different places, because as we know, it just can be so much work as an entrepreneur to really be consistent in all those different channels. So I kind of realized there was a need in the marketplace to help take this content that they were already creating and kind of expand it. So that's really when I was like, you know what, why don't I try this whole content repurposing thing and really make it my niche? And I haven't really looked back.
Amazing. I love that. And I mean, even just listening to you talk about what you do, it's like, yes, that is something that I struggle with. That's something that I completely understand. And I know that you did an amazing job for me in terms of thinking about how to actually multiply that content. Can you actually share a little bit more concretely what that can look like for maybe someone who's heard of this concept of repurposing for the first time?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think there can be a little bit of misconception, like, what is this whole content repurposing thing? So I'll break down exactly what I do so you can see like the concrete version of it. But yeah, so essentially, let's just say if you start with a podcast like Akua, um, you know, you would send in that podcast to me and my team. And so we'll start with sort of like an audio file. And then from there, that audio file gets turned into long form content for your blog. So it's not just taking the transcription, but it's really using that as a content base, and using that as the content outline, and creating a new piece of content from that content, adapting it for the specific platform at hand, and then taking that blog post and expanding it even further. So, usually that's a bundle of captions for, say, Instagram or LinkedIn, a newsletter for your email list, and a couple of graphics too. So you're really taking this one piece of audio content and then multiplying it and making it really work for those different channels.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And, for anyone that is thinking about, how can I make sure I am, maximizing my time or being really efficient for my, with my time, thinking about repurposing your content is a really great starting point. So as Emma mentioned, I start with the podcast. Other people start with video. There's also some that maybe even start with, something that is more along the lines of a longer blog post. So there's so many different ways that you really can start and really start to think about how you can take that one piece of content and use it in so many different places. So Emma, can you tell us maybe some of the top mistakes that thought leaders or service providers or anyone that's creating content tends to make, whether that's related to their content in general or just even repurposing?
Yeah, for sure. So as I just mentioned before, I think there can be like some misconceptions around repurposing, which sometimes can lead to mistakes. So one of those, which I kind of touched on, is just not adapting the content enough for each platform.
Yeah.
So they kind of think repurposing is like a simplified version. So whether that's just, taking a caption from Instagram and putting it over to LinkedIn or Facebook, but you leave all of the hashtags and you leave the link in bio, like sort of little sloppy mistakes like that. Or whether it's something like, taking a podcast and just taking the transcript and like putting it right on your website without really taking the time to convert it into a blog post, which is going to be more SEO friendly, which is going to be more friendly to the reader. So I think that's the first mistake, is just sort of like really oversimplifying the process and thinking that there's not a lot of work with like adapting it for all of the mediums, when it's really taking one piece and kind of skillfully and intentionally putting it to these different platforms. So I would say that's a really big one. And then what is another one? Oh yeah, another one that I can think of is just going back to not being intentional, is just sort of thinking like, oh, well, I have all of this old content, so I'm going to repurpose it. But you really need to make sure that you're analyzing your content plan, you're thinking about your goals for the next quarter, or like what you really want to achieve, and then you're actually picking out past content that's going to support those goals. So you kind of have to run your past content through a filter to see if it's even relevant to repurpose in the first place.
Those are two really great, mistakes that you've shared. And definitely things that when I think back, I definitely made, right? So not making sure that I'm thinking about the platform I'm using, and what you mentioned, right? That second one, really just being conscious, right? And intentional about what you're putting out there to see if it really reflects, one, what you're still sharing, and two, maybe even what your audience needs. And even with that one, I'd love to take it even just a little bit of a step further, and then recognizing that even when repurposing content, there still needs to be some sort of call to action. And I think that's one of the things I really learned a little bit more about, while working with you, right? How skillfully that can be done, even if it's not a very direct call to action. There still can be a piece there that people can take away, or that people can think of what that next step is.
Yeah, for sure. We always want to be telling our audience like what to do with our content, even if it's not a sales-based call to action, even if it's just engaging or leaving a comment or sharing it with a friend. We always try to make sure that we're adding call to actions to every post.
Yeah. So I think that's also a really great tip, right? Or maybe a mistake
Mhm.
that thought leaders make, that the only call to action is buy from me.
Yeah.
And right. And as you mentioned, Emma, nope, there's so many other things that you can have your audience do.
Yeah, I think having a nice variety and not being in like sell mode all the time, a little bit of nurture, a little bit of engagement. And then when you do decide to promote and you do decide to sell, it's going to feel a lot more natural to your audience.
Yes. All right. So I'd love for you to maybe share a little bit more about your services, maybe specifically. What do you do specifically for thought leaders? And I know that you also have an academy, right? A program that you also have.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I really have two different sides to my business. So the first side is that done for you content repurposing service. So it really is perfect for thought leaders, because again, all you have to do is show up in that one spot. So whether that's your podcast, a video, we have clients that don't even have a very like public facing content channel like that. They send us voice notes. They could even just send a little Loom. So you don't have to have like years and years of content to get started or professional podcasts, but you just need to be producing audio or video content. So if you're a speaker or someone who just speaking to the camera comes really naturally to you, it could be a really good option. So essentially, you just send us 4 pieces of content at the beginning of the month, and behind the scenes, me and my team work on it, and then we deliver you all of this content. I think it's 36 pieces of content that you get by the end of the month, so it's a lot of content. And then you can either have me and my team schedule that out for you, or just you take it and your internal team schedules it out to all of your different channels. So that's sort of what the packages look like for my Done For You service. And then I also do have an online program. It's called the Content Powerhouse Academy. So that is actually targeted to aspiring content repurposing experts. So maybe you were a virtual assistant like me, or you're doing a little bit of freelancing, and you really want to build a sustainable, profitable content repurposing business and really get involved in this new niche and learn some new skills. So probably going to be launching that in like April, May. I'm not exactly sure, but just have the wait list going right now.
Amazing. And I'll make sure that I get those links so that we can also put it in the caption as well. Maybe to sort of close out, Emma, it'd be great for you to talk a little bit more about what you are creating for my program. So I'm really excited to have Emma supporting me in my program, Up Level for Thought Leaders. Can you tell us maybe a little bit about the workshop that you're putting together?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm really excited about the workshop for your program as well. I think it's going to be so helpful for thought leaders, because again, I think there's so much talk about content strategy and like honing in on your message, which is so important, but you actually have to figure out a way to get that message out into the world and do it in a way that doesn't burn you out, that is efficient, which is productive, which I know you are all about. So I think it's a really good fit. So essentially what it is it's 4 steps to build your perfect content repurposing workflow. So I really walk you through, if you want to get started with this marketing strategy, how do you execute that from start? So like figuring out what kind of main content you even want to create, whether that's videos, podcasts, blogs, all the way up until the scheduling process. So, really using sort of a content management tool to get that content out into the world, to manage it by yourself or with your team and make sure it actually gets done. So it's very practical, honing in on that workflow so you can incorporate that into your business and really amp up your visibility in a consistent way. So that's really what it's all about.
Oh, I'm so excited about it. Thank you so much, Emma, for taking us through that. Anything else you maybe want to share with everyone about your work or about content repurposing they should keep in mind?
Not really. I mean, just start.
Yeah.
I feel like I guess for leaders, for aspiring thought leaders, it can be very intimidating to start producing that content and then of course start repurposing it to all of the platforms. So to just not feel like you have to have everything perfect, to not feel like you have to do everything perfectly each time. That's one thing I mentioned in the workshop is I have sort of a content repurposing tracker for my own content. Some weeks I'm only turning it into a newsletter. Some weeks I'm, only taking one piece and creating one extra piece of content. The reality is sometimes things don't always go perfectly to plan, but I think it's still so valuable to just have that workflow there and have that as part of your strategy and just really do what you can every week. So that's one thing, is don't be too much of a perfectionist.
I love that. I think that's such great advice just in general around any work that you're doing, right? Recognizing that you could probably get it better the second, third, and fourth time, but that you really have to try.
Yeah, it's so applicable to every aspect of business.
Yes. All right. Well, Emma, thank you so very much for taking the time to join me today. It was great, to have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about you and be able to share that with my audience as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. I had a great time.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye.
Okay, bye.